The foundations of Vault 92 were laid in May of 2062, deep beneath the soil as men and machines worked tirelessly to carve out a refuge for the chosen few. For 6 long years, concrete and steel were poured into the earth, until in 2068, the final bulkhead was sealed and the underground sanctuary stood complete. Vault 92 is not meant to house just anyone. Its design, prepared for a century of isolation, allowed for 245 souls to endure the silence of the world above. At its heart pulsed the General Atomics International Nuclear Reactor, humming with endless power, overseen by the unblinking logic of a Brainpower 7 control system. But it was not only survival that had been planned for. Vault-Tec's architects had a grander vision. Within those reinforced halls, the United States would preserve its cultural soul. The dwellers chosen were not engineers, soldiers, or politicians. They were musicians. To honor and protect the nation's musical legacy, the vault was stocked with instruments, recording equipment, and sound systems of every variety. It was to be more than a shelter. Vault 92 was a sanctuary of song, a hidden cathedral where melody and harmony could outlast the firestorm to come, echoing through the long years of humanity's survival underground. The music was not the vault's only purpose. Hidden in the overseer's terminal, locked behind layers of encryption, lay the true reason for Vault 92's creation. Once the heavy door sealed shut on that fateful day, October 23rd, 2077, Overseer Richard Rubin initiated Vault-Tec's confidential plan, WNMSCE, the White Noise Mind Suggestion Combat Experimentation. Through the use of module ultra-low frequency white noise, Vault-Tec sought to implant combat directives directly into the subconscious minds of its residents. The very artists chosen to safeguard humanity's legacy were also its unwitting test subjects. The first experiments were subtle, almost invisible. In the soundproof booths, while violinists tuned their strings and pianists left their fingers drift across ivory keys, hidden frequencies whispered beneath the music. At first, nothing seemed amiss. An odd pitch here, a flicker in the recording equipment there. To the dwellers, it was simply the quirks of aged machinery. The subjects remained unaware, their behaviors unchanged on the surface, even as suggestion began to take root. Meanwhile, life went on. Relationships grew in the confined underground halls. The strains of love songs and symphonies echoed alongside laughter and quiet confessions. Among the vault's most tender stories was that of Hilda Egelbirch, a gifted violinist whose melodies could bring even the most hardened engineer to tears, and Parker Livingston, the calm, patient supervisor of the recording studios. The romance blossomed beneath the hum of the reactor and the faint hiss of static from the speakers. A fragile spark of humanity within a cage built for manipulation. The initial success of the sound booth trials filled Overseer Rubin with quiet triumph. The proof was undeniable, and so he pressed forward with the full scope of Vault-Tec's plan. With the aid of Professor John Malice and the ever-shadow operatives of Section 4, the reach of the white noise expanded beyond the controlled confines of the test chambers. Rubin ordered the emitters wired directly into the vault's loudspeakers. What began as harmless melodies drifting through the recording studios now carry with them an invisible, subliminal frequencies hidden beneath every note. The musicians, unaware, poured their hearts into their instruments, their compositions laced with whispers only the subconscious could hear. To secure absolute exposure, Rubin imposed strict controls. Personal sound players and headphones were quietly confiscated. Their distribution halted under the guise of technical maintenance. If dwellers wished to listen, it had to be inside the recording booths, where every performance and playback carried the signal. No ear would escape it. Soon even the sanctuary of the living quarters was compromised. Rubin, eager to test limits, had the frequencies piped through the walls into the dormitories. Families drifted to sleep every night beneath the low hum of engineered static. Lullabies woven with something far darker. Malice, though a partner in theory, was quietly cut from this expansion. The professor never realized how thoroughly the overseer had taken control of his research. What had begun as an experiment whispered in the halls of science was now the air Vault-92 breathed, and within that quiet manipulation, something began to stir. Professor John Malice remained blind to the overseer's ambition. From his perspective, the experiment was proceeding exactly as Vault-Tec had promised. Controlled, clinical, and safe. When the first large-scale trials concluded, he was quick to congratulate his team, his voice ringing with pride in the sterile labs of Vault-92. The data seemed extraordinary. Nearly a third of the subjects had slipped into a trance-like state under the layered white noise. Their eyes glassy, their movements slowed as they lulled by some unforeseen rhythm. In those moments of vacancy, the team had planned the simplest of suggestions. Barely more than cues, subtle motions, and minor ticks meant to test the system. Scratch your ear, tap your foot, clear your throat. To Malice, the results were breathtaking. The response rate was almost perfect, just shy of 100%. With a margin of error so small, it could be dismissed as statistical noise. He saw scientific triumph where Rubin saw opportunity. The professor spoke of opening doors to understanding the human mind. The overseer thought only of how far those doors might be pushed, and what could be forced through them once they were unlatched. And so, with the professor basking in his victory, Rubin quietly prepared the next stage. An escalation that would carry Vault-92 far beyond harmless ticks and into the realm of weaponized obedience. The first signs of failure came quietly, then exploded into violence. One of the musicians, designated subject V920717, succumbed to a madness no one had foreseen. Without warning, he flew into a frenzy, his hands that once coaxed beauty from an instrument now soaked in blood. By the time security reached him, 3 dwellers lay dead, their bodies mangled in a recording studio. It took 23 bullets to bring him down, and even then, the man did not fall easily. Professor Malice was shaken. The subject had no record of aggression, no hint of instability. For him, the tragedy was a warning. The white noise, he feared, was twisting minds in ways no one could control. But the overseer saw only proof. The frenzy, the strength, the grim determination. It all pointed towards the kind of soldier Vault-Tec had dreamed of creating. The loss of life to him was negligible. The experiments pressed onward. The body of the subject was carted away under cold lights, scheduled for dissection in hopes of understanding what had gone wrong, or as Rubin saw it, what had gone right. What neither Malice nor his team realized yet was that the white noise was not simply whispering into his subconscious. It was remaking the brain itself. Neurological decay spread like rot. Dizziness, nausea, altering motor skills. The higher functions eroded slowly, stripped away until only raw compulsion remained. For some, it ended in psychosis. For others, obedience sharpened into something inhuman. As minds unraveled, the vault itself began to betray its inhabitants. Vault-92 had been built dangerously close to underground water source. In fact, buried deep in the blueprints. The years of pressure and seepage began to eat at its bones. Rust bloomed in the pipes, leaking water hissing through corroded seams. Stains spread across the walls, and in the lower levels, the damage grew dire. Stress fractures split the concrete, walls crumbling no matter how often the technicians reinforced them. They patched and braced, but the truth was inescapable. Vault-92 was becoming a tomb, but the fractures in the concrete were nothing compared to the fractures in the mind. Within a month, Vault-92 was drowning in blood. 12 separate incidents, tore through its narrow corridors, each one sparked by the same hidden signal that had once been hailed as a triumph. 10 dwellers broke under the strain of the white noise, their artistry dissolving into mania. 7 lives were lost, men and women who had once been celebrated performers, now reduced to feral executioners, who ripped their neighbors apart with their bare hands. The practice halls and recording booths became slaughterhouses, their walls echoing with the screams instead of music. Professor Malice, hollow-eyed and stricken with guilt, begged Overseer Rubin to put an end to the experiment. He spoke of halting the broadcast, of dismantling the emitters, of saving what few lives could be spared. But outside the vault was only ash and silence. No help would come. Vault 92 was cut off, and every soul inside was at the mercy of its overseer. Rubin did not bend. To him, the carnage was not failure, but confirmation. The subjects showed strength and obedience in the throes of madness, qualities he deemed priceless. The deaths, he told himself, were sacrifices demanded by progress. Still, even he recognized the danger of letting the violence spiral unchecked. And so, Rubin ordered as new safeguard woven into the signal. A command phrase: sanity is not statistical. When broadcast, it will still the hands of the afflicted, pacifying them long enough for the guards to intervene. It was less secure than a leash, another tool to keep Vault 92 under his control. But words alone could not mend the fractures that ran through the vault. Not in the walls, not in the people, and not in the music which had begun to twist and distort, carrying with it an undertone no one could name, yet everyone could feel. The command phrase proved little more than a threadbare patch on a dam ready to burst. The killings did not stop, they only slowed, flaring up again with greater fury every time. By then, Professor Malice had begun to take stock of the vault's collapse. Nearly 30% of its people, close to 70 souls, were showing unmistakable signs of clinical insanity. 35 already dead, their bodies filling the morgue and overflow storage. The vault, once filled with the sound of violins, pianos, and brass, now echoed with whispers, sobs, and the distant clang of boots against steel, as security dragged another friend or lover into confinement. For Malice, the conclusion was undeniable. The experiment was not a breakthrough, it was annihilation. The white noise was not refining men and women into perfect soldiers. It was unmaking them, stripping away their humanity until only mindless, violent brutes remained. The very legacy Vault 92 had been meant to preserve was being torn apart by the invisible hands of its own overseer. Desperation gave birth to the professor's final, dangerous idea. If the vault could not be salvaged, then it must be abandoned. The survivors, though still clinging to their reason, needed to escape before the walls became nothing more than a cage of madness. But before he could act, before he could risk the only hope of saving what remained of the vault, John Malice knew he had to uncover the truth. The white noise had been altered, twisted beyond the parameters he had signed off on. Something more than research was hidden in the signal, something Rubin had kept from him all along. Overseer Rubin would not hear of escape. To him, Malice's proposal was treason, an admission of weakness, something the Overseer could never allow. Even as the situation slipped further from his grasp, even as the command phrase faltered and those afflicted no longer obeyed, Rubin clung to his authority like a drowning man clings to wreckage. When the vault erupted in chaos, he made his choice. Orders went out to the security force, not to contain the madness, but to eliminate the one man who dared question the project. Professor John Malice was to be executed, his death a desperate offering to restore order. It was a fool's hope. Malice's blood did nothing to stem the tide. The white noise had taken root too deeply, reshaping minds beyond repair. Nearly half the vault had fallen into insanity. Their brilliance and artistry burned away, leaving only violence behind. Those still sane tried to resist. Small groups of dwellers banded together, scavenging weapons from the armory and makeshift tools from the workshops. They barricaded corridors, posted guards, and prayed their numbers would hold. But it was already too late. The howls of the deranged echoed through the halls, blending with the shrieks of steel tearing under corrosion. And no wall or barricade could hold back both madness and ruin. Vault 92 is breaking, its people, structure, and its very purpose. In the heart of it all, Overseer Rubin still refused to admit the truth. The fall of Vault 92 came not with a final battle, but with silence. When the project imploded and its people tore each other apart, there were none left to keep the vault alive. The engineers and maintenance crews laid among the dead, their tools dropped beside them, their bodies rotting in the corridors they had once sworn to protect. With no one left to tend the machinery, the structure failed. The underground lake, long kept at bay by rusting bulkheads and groaning pumps, at last claimed its prize. Water seeped, then poured, filling chambers once built to outlast the end of the world. The flooding was merciless, drowning entire levels in darkness and decay. In the years that followed, Vault 92 became a carcass. Its halls no longer echoing with music, but with the scratching of claws and the howls of beasts. Animals crept in through the cracked walls and ruptured access ways, some twisted by radiation, in time into grotesque mutations. They nested in the studios once lined with instruments, proud dormitories that still stank of death, and fought among piles of weapons, explosives, and bones scattered by the Vault's final war. What was meant to be a sanctuary for humanity's greatest legacy had become nothing more than a grave, a tomb of static and silence, where the ghosts of music lingered, drowned beneath the white noise of rushing water.